In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, I will begin this day. I thank you, Lord, for having preserved me during the night. I will do my best to make all I do today pleasing to you, in accordance with your will. My dear Mother Mary, watch over me this day. My guardian angel, take care of me. Saint Joseph and all you saints of God, pray for me. Amen.
Good morning, educators. I'm Stina de Guzman from Don Bosco Press, Inc., and welcome to Salesiana Books Chalk Talk Online. Salesiana Books Chalk Talk is a teacher training program that Don Bosco Press provides for its partner schools. Despite this pandemic, we move forward and make most of this challenging situation, and that's why we are bringing you Chalk Talk and making it online. Thus, we call it Chalk Talk Online. Chalk Talk Online, in partnership with UP Open University, presents to you today the fifth installment of the Remote Teaching and Learning series. Today's topic is learner and teacher support in remote instruction. This is going to be another productive and informative morning for all of us. So let us formally welcome. So let us start. To formally welcome you, let me call on the Executive Director of Don Bosco Press Inc., Brother Carmelo Martinez, SDB.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our educators present. Good morning, dear friends and colleagues. Welcome to this fifth installment of the UPOU Chalk Talk online series. I just have a poll here, just asking how many sessions have you joined so far? So we are now on our fifth session. The poll is up. Have you joined the UPOU Chalk Talk online before? A, all the previous 4 sessions. B, 3 out of 4 sessions. C, 2 out of 4. D, 1 out of 4. And E, if you are joining the session for the first time. Okay, just an update of what's happening in the poll. A good number of us have been present since day one, since the first session. 51% of the participants to this session this morning have been part since of this seminar since the first session. And then 23%, which is of you, have been present in 3 out of 4 sessions. And then 4%, 2 out of 4 sessions. And then 2%, 4%, 1 out of 4 sessions. And there is an 18% part of the total participants this morning who are joining for the first time. For those who have been with us in the previous sessions, thank you for coming back and welcome once again to this UPOU Chalk Talk online series. And to the first timers, we hope that you will be enriched and that you will enjoy at the same time our discussion this morning. Okay, let me now close the poll. With the feedback that we are receiving from you, we are happy to know that many of you are benefiting from these sessions. We thank Dr. Mel Bandalaria and her team from the University of the Philippines Open University for consistently and constantly supporting us in this endeavor. We have also been receiving requests for the video recordings of the previous sessions. In fact, some of you mentioned that they would use it in their in-service training for their teachers. We are now in the final stages of preparing our YouTube channel where we would make all the recordings of all our Chalk Talk online series available. Please follow and visit our Facebook page for updates regarding this matter. We hope that this session 2 on learner and teacher support in remote instruction will be as enjoyable and interesting as the other sessions that we had. We hope that you will continue to take part in Don Bosco Press Chalk Talk online series. I have another question for you. Uh, we just would like to know through this poll, what are your current activities now in your school? A, are you still in the enrollment process? Or B, you're already having your in-service training? C, you're still in the planning and preparation stage, meaning no activity yet in the school. D, you're still on vacation. Or E, others. We don't know yet. Perhaps you can type in the chat box what these others is all about. Okay, some are already having classes. Online classes, yeah. Okay, a summary of the poll so far. It's still ongoing, but a good number of our participants have already started their enrollment, 29%, in-service training, 26%, 31% of us here are still in the planning and preparation stage. There are still those who are in vacation. We hope that you're having a good time in your during this vacation of yours, and 10% others. So if you can share in the chat box what others are doing. So online classes, first week of orientation, module making, we're still on break. Yeah, Sir Oji is coming all the way from the USA and they're still on their summer break. Enrollment, yes. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. If I may also plug in, our other Chalk Talk online offerings currently ongoing are the Christ Evangelization and Faith Formation Series, or SHEPS. This is for religion teachers and youth ministers. We are having it every other Friday, and we're going to have one session this Friday. So those of you who are interested, kindly register. Also, likewise, we are having the parent and home relationships at this time of home-based learning in partnership with the Love Institute. It's going to be every other Thursday, and we're going to have it next week. And if I may also announce later, I hope Ma'am Tina will also talk about this. We are going to launch two new series. One is on mental health and guidance program in partnership with the Psychological Association of the Philippines. I think this is going to start already on July 24. And please reserve your Saturdays of August because we have another series which we are going to schedule on Saturdays of August on curriculum and instruction. And this is in collaboration with UP Diliman Curriculum Studies area. I have one last poll. Knowing that we have already have varied schedule at this time, some are on vacation, some have already started their in-service training, while others are still in the planning and preparation stage. May we know just a general picture of your availability? When is the best time to have the Chalk Talk online series? Is it on weekdays in the morning, or is it on weekdays in the afternoon, Or do you prefer a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon? Okay, thank you for participating. I think uh, if you can see the result, it's almost like it's a tie. So 25% weekday morning, 23% weekdays afternoon, 25% Saturday morning, and another 26% of Saturday afternoon. So perhaps I think the strategy is to keep it as it is. So UPOU is in the morning, Sheps is scheduled in the afternoon, and then we have the lab institute on Thursday morning, and we hope to start with the CTO on curriculum and instruction in August on Saturday morning. Thank you so much for your participation in that poll. And thank you for your continued support. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo at nawa ay pagpalain tayong lahat ng poong may kapal. It is also my honor to introduce our speaker this morning, Professor Joan V. Serrano. She is an associate professor of the Faculty of Management and Development Studies of the University of the Philippines Open University. She is the current director of the UPOU Information Office. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Development Communication from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She also earned her Master of Management degree major in Development Management, as well as her Doctor of Philosophy major in Development Communication from the same university. Over the last 2 decades, she has authored a number of international and national scientific publications, presented in various international and local conferences, and served as resource speaker in various trainings, seminars, and fora in various areas such as open and distance e-learning, environmental advocacy, development communication, and educational technology, and other related fields. She will also be joined later on by Dr. Melinda Bandalaria, the Chancellor of the UPOU, UP Open University. Friends, without further ado, let us welcome Professor Joan Serrano.
Good morning. So I hope everyone can hear and see me. Thank you very much for the introduction. So today we will be discussing about very important but often neglected topic in an online or remote learning environment, and this is learner support. I bet that in all of the webinars you have attended, aside from the one hosted by Don Bosco, you seldom encounter webinars on learner support. And as we discuss learner support, we'll also discuss the kind of support needed by the teachers as they provide support services to their learners. In your previous webinars, you have been presented with the subsystems or components of a distance learning or remote teaching system. Sorry. S- I'm sorry. Can everyone see? It's the slide app. Let me just check. All right. Sorry for that. Okay. So yeah. Okay. In your previous webinars, you have been presented with the subsystems or components of a distance learning or remote teaching system. So when you're planning for your remote teaching and learning, it is important to consider all these components. So you have course design and development, you have course delivery, which involves your teaching and learning, and then you have organization and management, and then of course you have student support. And I know that probably many of you have been focusing on designing and developing your course materials as well as preparing for the actual course delivery. And of course, you're also looking into the organization and management as you adjust to new technologies, structures, processes, and policies. And based from my interactions with administrators and teachers from the previous webinars where I have been invited, many of their questions really revolve around course development, course delivery, administration, and technical requirements. Not much attention is given to learner support. This is understandable since many of you are coming from residential universities or campus-based universities, where most of the services are actually available to the students anytime. So if they need a particular service, they just go to a particular office to avail of that services. However, now that we are in this remote learning environment, it is important to understand the unique demands of this mode of learning as well as the unique needs of the learners. In a remote learning environment, there is what we call the transactional distance. This distance is not just the physical separation between the teacher and the learners, but also refers to the psychological distance. And this distance sometimes creates a sense of isolation due to lack of interaction. Although nowadays we have a lot of media technology for communication, but it is important that all of this should be incorporated in a learner support system. Based on literature, this sense of isolation is linked with attrition, instructional ineffectiveness, failing academic achievement, and negative attitudes and overall dissatisfaction with the learning experience. Online and remote learners can easily feel isolated if they do not feel connected to both the greater context, which is the university level, and the local, which is the program and course level social context. Now, this can negatively affect retention, and students may drop out of a program or course because they do not feel part of a community and may not be motivated to continue their studies. Now, closely associated with retention is student satisfaction with the courses offered online or remotely. If courses are not properly designed, students may experience frustration with courses which are offered remotely because they do not actually possess the skills needed to be successful. In fact, students' feeling of isolation can be compounded if they are ill-equipped to deal with the demands of studying remotely. Now, we have to acknowledge that our students are used to conventional mode of learning. And many of your students right now may not possess the self-directed skill set, specifically self-discipline, the ability to work alone, time management, learning independently, and the ability to develop a plan for completing their work and so on. So it is important that you understand what learner support is, what are the different learner support. It's important, and you should include this component in your design and plan for your university and for your courses. Now, let us take a look at some of the definitions of learner support. So, Tate defined learner support as the range of services both for individuals and students in groups which complement the course materials or learning resources that are uniform for all learners and which are often perceived as the major offering of institutions using ODL. It is also defined as all those interactive processes that are intended to support and facilitate the learning process. Another definition is that learner support are all those elements capable of responding to a known learner or a group of learners before, during, and after the learning process. Let me point out that in these definitions, supporting the learning process and the learners are highlighted. Remember that in learner support, it is not about us, the teacher, or the institution, but about the learners. Let us always remember that when we talk of learner support or student support, we are talking about the needs of the students or the learners. No matter how grand our plan is in our institution on learner support, what matters most at the end of the day is that we provide and cater our services to what the students need in terms of learning and coping with remote teaching and learning. So, as teachers and educators, we have to shift how we view learner support from our own view and shift it to their view and address the questions about their actual needs and how can we support their learning. Okay, now it is worth noting that the term learner is becoming more commonly used in the literature because it implies a more active and proactive role in the learning process than the word student. According to some scholars, the term learner is more generic and can be applied to a wide variety of contexts within which learning takes place. So it can be used for both public and private schools, for post secondary institutions, even for corporate and public employee training settings. In remote teaching, a more learner centric model is favored over a teacher centric one. The roles and activities of teachers and learners have evolved, which affect the nature of learner support that should be provided. An example of this is the decision of a learner to drop out from a course is now understood to be dependent upon a wide range of variables that have much to do with the forms of learner support. Okay, now according to the literature, there are three functions of learner support, and this is cognitive, affective, and systemic. So when we talk of cognitive, this is about supporting and developing learning through the mediation of the standards and uniform elements of course materials and learning resources for individual students. So among the support services included here are tutoring, facilitation of learning, academic interaction between the teachers and the learners, assessment of learning, and including the pre-packaged course materials that underwent proper instructional design. And when we talk of effective, we are talking of providing an environment that supports students, creates commitment, and enhances self-esteem. We can include here materials which support the development of study skills, program planning, and career development. We can also include guidance and counseling services, as well as services for students with special needs, such as those persons with disability, geographical remoteness, including some those who are incarcerated. And for this systemic, it is concerned with establishing administrative processes and information management systems. So this includes registration, record keeping, and information management. Now, when we look at learner support, can be viewed on three levels. So you can look at it from the university or institutional level, on the college or program level, and on the course level. Now, there are different types of institutional learner support. So I have listed here 11 types of institutional learner support, meaning this is a support given by the institution or the school. and it is not just given by the specific teacher or the faculty member assigned to the student. So this is on the university or school level. First is the information support, the learner intake support, administrative support, technological support, study skills assistance, counseling, library support, support to students with disabilities, students' rights and gender considerations, learner satisfaction monitoring and environmental scanning, and examination and test services. So now let us try to look at each kind of support so that you would know if your institution is able to provide this, and if not, how your institution should be able to provide this to the student. So I just would like to go back to the context now because we are in the remote teaching and learning. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of our students. So our students have been so used to a campus-based setting wherein if they need a specific support, they would just go to that particular office. So, for example, they would be needing particular information about the university. Then they would probably go to the information office and would ask for a brochure or a flyer about the university. Or if they would be needing some books or other support services from the library, then they would physically go to that particular office. And if they would be needing some counseling because probably they have some personal issues and concerns, then they would go to a counselor. But now in a remote learning, all of those offices are gone now physically. I mean, they cannot physically visit these offices, which means you have to find ways on how to provide these services, even if your students are not able to go physically to the campus. Which is why it is very important that you are aware that these types of institutional support should be provided and should be available to your students. Okay, so when we look at information support, um, when we talk of institutional learner support, it actually starts even before the learners are considered officially enrolled. So it starts once they browse your website and inquire about the university. Now, this is very important, especially for your incoming or your newly admitted students. So they will not be going to an admission office anymore. So they will be looking for the information, everything in your website, which means your website should be accurate, should be complete, and all the available information are there because all of this information are contributing factor to the success of a remote learner. So, for example, your website, it should not just be something of a compliance just because you should have a website. You should regularly check and assess if all the information there are accurate and are updated because all your newly admitted students will be relying to your website now for information. So are there admission information there? What are the requirements they need once they're admitted? Are they posted in your website? What are the program information, the contact information? An FAQ page is a good practice for a website. And other very relevant information should be included there. So, information about scholarship, financial assistance, financial aids should also be included in the website. Now, the idea here is not for you to wait for students to ask questions, but you should be proactive enough to post all the relevant information so that when students or newly admitted students would go through or navigate your website, they will find all the information that they would need without even asking you anymore. Now, this is actually very important, especially for parents as well, because otherwise parents would always be emailing you and asking you questions. And another important information support is the social media page. We know that we are now in the social media age. Um, Almost everyone has a social media account, and we basically spend most of our time looking at our social media account, looking at news, updates through our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, which means your university or school should have a very active social media page. And all information should be posted there on a daily basis. And then you should think of an automated response to make your lives easier, so that you will not be asking each question posted by the student. Remember that because of this 24/7 on-demand thinking of our clientele, they would always demand an immediate answer from the school or the university. So it's an ideal practice if you would set up a chatbot so that information would be provided to the student instantly, even if your staff who is in charge of the social media or the website is not there to answer their questions. You can also think of a ticketing system so that students would have an automated reply acknowledging that their concerns have been received by the university. Again, you have to put yourselves in the shoes of your students, because imagine students sending email or messages and without any acknowledgement at all. So they would really feel agitated, frustrated, and this would eventually lead to a negative consequence. Probably they would drop out of the course, or they will not be motivated to learn anymore. And then you should also think of a help desk so that students would always have someone to go to if they need some information. So again, the key here is to ensure that the information are complete, accurate, and updated when they search your website, social media page. And you should always remember that your learners are now dependent on the information you provide them, since they can no longer physically search for those information the way they have been used to. Okay. Now we go to uh, another important component of institutional support, which is the learner intake support. So again, it includes admission. So for newly admitted students, you need to provide support to them. Unlike in residential setting where students come to your office, now that everything is done remotely, you need to come to your students. When I say come to the students, this is virtually. I do not mean physically. You just have to make sure that the newly admitted students know what they are supposed to do step by step. This includes detailed information on how they can enroll or register, and how they will pay their fees. And there must be complete and clear information about the registration process, the schedule, the policies. As I just mentioned earlier, information on financial aid, scholarship, and financial assistance. Especially now that we are in a crisis, and this is a very trying times. So this information must reach the students on time. And another important component of learner intake support is learner readiness for online and remote learning. One important issue that should be addressed here is the readiness to undertake an independent mode of learning. Learner readiness for online or remote learning is very important. This prepares the potential learners to be ready for the complex environment of online or remote learning. Now, if done right, this type of support will actually increase the success rate and decrease the attrition rate of your students. When I say learner readiness, so you should design or devise a way to assess if your learner are ready, so that they will not be going into something that they are not prepared for. Remember, your learners are learners in a conventional setting, and then suddenly they are forced to go into remote teaching and learning, which means the institution, as part of the learner support services, must prepare your learner for this kind of environment. Again, you have to think of the transactional distance. There's the physical as well as the psychological distance between the teacher and the learner. So you should provide for the bridging of that gap, so that students will always be motivated and should always be have that feeling of excitement, as if they're still going to the class, even if they're not going to the class physically. Now, the key tasks under the learner intake support include setting goals so that students can visualize how they can achieve their individual goals and to help them achieve their objectives, and as I have mentioned, assess their readiness for remote learning. And then, of course, another important component of learner intake is the orientation portion. So do not forget about the orientation. So there should be a virtual orientation for new students. And this should not just be a one-time orientation. Orientation should be recorded so that students who were not able to attend, they can just play this at their more convenient time, because we do not know the context of our learners now. Some may not have internet access all the time. Some would probably experience brownout or other contexts which we are not aware of because we do not um, have them physically at our campus anymore. So aside from the virtual orientation, you can probably prepare handbooks, orientation handbooks, flyers, and other frequently asked questions, which you can send out to your students through email, or you can post through your website or your social media page. Okay. Another institutional support is the administrative support, which includes, of course, record keeping, information management, the semester registration, online grades, dropping LOA up to graduation. So remember again, students will not have access anymore immediately to their office to the university registrar to register or to ask about their grades or to ask about their status. So there should be a parallel service that is available online. So do you have an online student information system wherein students can just log in and have access to their grades, access to their records, access to all the information that they need as a student. So you should have this incorporated in your plan. Again, I'm always emphasizing here that students your students are conventional or residential or campus-based students have always been used to a support wherein they will go to a particular office. So now that it's a remote learning environment, all this information should be available to them and easily accessible to them. So it is you as an institution reaching out to them, be more proactive on how to provide these support services. And then another institutional support is the technological support, which includes support on the learning management system. So this is very crucial. The learning management system that you will be using in your university or school um, is now their virtual classroom. So you should always be 24/7 available to provide technological support for the LMS, um, for troubleshooting, maintenance, because this is now the lifeblood of your students. They will be relying to your LMS because it becomes now their virtual classroom. And then, of course, as I've mentioned, their student database. If they have problems on how to access student database, should be able to provide technological support. And of course, you should ensure that there's security of student data. We all know that because everyone now is using is online always and doing all their transaction remotely, some of the data might be compromised. So, as part of your technological support, you should provide information to your students as well as your teacher on how to protect your how to make their data secure and protected. And of course, this also includes data analytics. Data analytics is very important. Technological support should include data analytics so that institution would know how to address specific concern if students are already dropping out, what are their concerns, which could be captured by data analytics. And then, of course, what are the software, apps, and programs that are required to support the learners of the students? So this should be planned for by the technological support, including the hardware and tools. And as I've mentioned, it's very important for the troubleshooting and maintenance. We cannot let our guard down when it comes to technological support. So if our website is down for just if your website is down for just a day or so, your students would feel agitated. If your learning management is down, even just for an hour, your students would be agitated. So it's important that you should have a very strong technological support. And then another support, institutional support, which is actually a very crucial part of institutional support, is the study skill assistance. Um, Most of the reasons why students drop out boils down to problems relating to study skills. So you should be able to provide for various types of study skills, including time management, how to effectively study remotely. You should provide students with resources to um, to study remotely and how to cope and balance with other life demands. You should provide students with resources on writing paper, proper citation, avoiding plagiarism, annotating online resources, and you should help students be motivated by providing them with this type of study skill assistance, develop self confidence in themselves as students, and find ways to manage the stress of learning, especially mental stress brought about by the pandemic. So, this is actually very crucial now because we are in a crisis and students will be experiencing a lot of mental stress because of this current situation. So you should be able to provide this skill assistance to their students and how to balance or how to cope with this particular stress. And we should also be, as a university or a school, be providing study skill assistance on cyberbullying, digital security, and protecting data privacy. Okay. Um, Another important institutional support is counseling. Now that you will be providing online counseling, it is also important that your counselors or your staff providing counseling should be retooled and they should upgrade themselves on how to provide online counseling. um, this is actually very critical because how do you provide counseling when you lack all the social cues which are present during face-to-face counseling? So even if we are doing this synchronous type of communication, it's really very difficult to do counseling because you do not know the specific context of the students. So all these things should be considered when you are doing counseling, and you should, as an institution, you should also address how do you retool or how do you prepare the counselors, including the teachers, because they will be the one who will be facing the students most of the time, at least virtually, on how they will be able to cope with this kind of situation. Um, and a good practice here is that online counselor can develop online resources that can help students identify and address barriers to reaching their educational goals, interact with learners when intervention is necessary, and to work with other staff to ensure that processes and procedures enhance learning. Okay. Again, let me just emphasize that counseling is very important, specifically in this public health crisis, because according to research and according to many mental health practitioners, mental stress is really would really be a problem in these trying times. Okay. Now, another important learner institutional support is the library support. The major challenge in giving library support online is learner access. So online or remote learners will not be able to access physical books which your library offers. So even if you have very good, very big library and you have a very good and large collection of books, in this crisis, students will not be able to access those physical books anymore. So you have to do an inventory of what are the available online resources. Do you have subscriptions to electronic library, electronic databases, and how will students be able to access these books and journals online? Now, a well-designed library support should be readily accessible from the institution's web pages, and you should provide an upfront tutorial for the new learner. And materials must be integrated with the online courses, and should provide tools to assist with online searches. Although our students are actually Gen Z and they are digital natives and they are quite skilled when doing searches, it's still important that you provide tutorial and learning resources on how to do it properly. So this is part of your library support. And then there's also that component wherein you can link learners with other libraries if that particular book or resource is not available in your electronic database or in your subscription, in the subscription of your university. Okay. But of course, you can also have a repository of your open educational resources. And if you don't have one, you can do a comprehensive search of available repositories of OER. And this should be available in your web pages so that the students will be able to easily access them. Now, the key here is easy access because students would be relying to the materials that you upload or that you put in your website. And if they cannot access it, then what will happen is that they will get frustrated, they will send email, and if they will not be responded to immediately, students would feel demotivated. So it's important that everything should be integrated and should be easily accessible for the students to find them. Okay. Now, another institutional support is supports to students who are differently abled. Now, there should be materials which are available in alternative formats so that students or persons with disability will be able to access them. So you can probably think of assistive technologies, and then you can have a system of referral for specific needs of persons with disability. And I think you should also consider this as part of your institution's advocacy for inclusion. And then, of course, we have student rights and gender consideration. So, a student support should be gender responsive, uphold student rights, and follow the student code of conduct, acknowledge ownership of knowledge, intellectual property, honesty, and integrity. So students should be aware of their rights and gender-related concerns. And included here is their right to interact. So you should provide support services for the students to have peer-to-peer interaction or peer-to-peer support, so they can form probably a study buddy connection, which build peer support. And please take note that peer support is very important in online or remote teaching. So having a peer support or a study buddy that you can call it a study buddy will keep your students motivated. They will be able to remind each other of important upcoming events. They have someone to test their knowledge and ability with, and they will develop networks outside the classroom. So this is actually part of the social interaction, and this should be included in your support services to your students. So that you can probably have a hub, an online hub where students can interact with each other. Students can be interacting in a group chat, so that they would be able to support each other. And then, of course, learner satisfaction monitoring and environmental scanning. So to increase program completion and success rate and to help your students reach their educational goals, it is also a good practice to um, do a learner satisfaction monitoring and environmental scanning regularly. So this is a type of an evaluation and monitoring of what the student of the support services that you are providing, and about the satisfaction of the students on the services that you are providing them. Now, now that you are offering your courses remotely, it would also be ideal to think of an examination and test services, because this should be planned institutionally on instead of on a course level. Because, for example, a school would purchase an online exam system, so this should be planned institutionally. On an institutional level, you should have policies and guidelines on how to conduct examination to your students and how would you proctor and invigilate. Okay. Now let's go to the second level, which is the college or the program support level. Um, Aside from the institutional level, you should also be able to provide support services to your student on a program level. So how do you do this? You should have an updated program handbook, updated, or you should provide program or course planning, should provide program requirements, and you should provide immediate support related to the program. It's also a good practice to have an FAQs for academic advising. So in program advising, students need to be walked through the program or course planning, program requirements, including transferability of course in case shifting of courses before the end of the program. So students should be walked through on how they will go about with the program, with the particular with the program that they're taking. For example, they're taking accountancy, so you should be able to walk through each student on the program plans and the program requirements. So you need not do it individually. So you can do a program or a cohort level type of advising, so that students would always be aware of where they are now on the program level. And then this kind of support should be done by the program chair or the department chair or an academic advisor, but it should be on a program level. Okay. Now let's go to the course level support. On the course level support, this now boils to the support given by the teacher. It is important to note that learner support is related to all aspects, especially in course design and delivery. Based on research, a good design can reduce substantially demand for learner support by ensuring clarity and building in appropriate learning activities. So, this means that even while you are doing your course design and development, this is actually related to learner support, because if you plan your if you design your course and develop your course properly, then it would actually reduce the demand for learner support. So this means you should apply design principles. So what are these design principles? You should design for learners, should design for learning outcome, design for learning resources, and design for interaction. So you should apply all these design principles in the development of course materials to reduce the demand for learner support. It is also advisable to design learning activities that are collaborative in nature, because these support the learning process of the students, and it actually promotes active learning. Um, Now, it is also important to provide scaffolding because it helps students when they struggle with new concepts or ideas. It helps students to gain deeper understanding of a topic or subject, and help students to evaluate a range of different ideas or practices, and help students to understand the limits of knowledge, and challenges students to go beyond their current level of thinking or practice to acquire deeper understanding or a higher level of competency. So by providing scaffolding, you're actually enhancing learner support. Because if courses are properly designed and there is proper scaffolding, then students will not be demanding learner support anymore, because they feel that they are satisfied and motivated with the courses that they are taking. Okay, so that's why it is very important that on the course level, everything should be properly designed and properly developed, so that students will not be asking anymore about specific services, because you have already provided the scaffolding for that particular need of the student. Okay, so just a recap, there are three levels of learner support. So it's on the institutional level, on the program level, and on the course level. So all these support services must be properly planned. They must be properly designed and should really be integrated in the plan of an institution and in the plan of a particular course. Okay. Now, let me just walk you through on the course level some of the nitty gritty when it comes to providing support services. So we can look at the roles of a teacher in an online or remote teaching uh, in four forms. So we have the pedagogical role. This includes creating discussions that focus on critical concepts, principles, and skills, as well as providing feedback. And then there's the social role of a teacher, which fosters a friendly social environment to promote learning and sharing. And then we have the managerial role of a teacher, which means teacher will clarify discussion objectives, timelines, and procedural rule of a course. And then the teacher also play a technical role, so make students comfortable with the learning management system, with the tools that will be used for the class, as well as the software. So these are the four roles of a teacher that will actually provide for the support services to the learners. So let us take a look at these different kind of roles as we go through the different stages in a course. So let me divide the stages of facilitation or the stages of course delivery in four general stages. So in these stages, learner support should already be present as a teacher, and on a course level. So before the course begins, so for example, your course will start in September. So before the course begins, that's the first stage. And then during the first week of the semester, so if the start is September 1, so September 1 to 7 is the first week. And then throughout the entire course, so we will lamp that from September 7 until the end of the course, and during the final week of a particular semester. So let me just run through because I would like to share with you how students should be, adequately and effectively supported. So you have later. Don't worry if these are very small text because this handout will be uploaded to you later. Okay, so before the course begin, so let us take a look at your managerial role. Your managerial role as a teacher. So you provide support services in this by carrying out these different roles. So you send informational message, including how to log in, what materials are needed, and how to get them, and who to contact for technical assistance. So remember, your students now are online and are remote learners. So most of the time, their contact to the university is the teacher, which means they will be relying to the teacher for all the information about a specific course. So before the course begin, as a teacher should be able to send in all the login requirements and all the information needed for the students to log into that particular course. Although this can actually be done by the technological support on an institutional level, but as a teacher, you should make sure that that kind of support is provided for by the university. So you can probably follow up with the university technological support if all the login credentials have been sent and if students were able to log in. Now, it's now your responsibility also to make sure that the course is available at least 1 week prior for student previewing. So you should be the one to ensure that the course is not hidden anymore, and that the course uh, is seen by the student. So when I say it's hidden, if you have a learning management system, it's part of your role as a teacher to ensure that you make your course, that you show your course to the student. So you'll be the one to click on that particular button or functionality and ensure that the course is already available. I'm saying this because this is actually one problem that we have encountered, especially for those new teachers or faculty members who are new in online teaching and learning. So students would be some of our students are emailing the registrar's office, the dean's office, the faculty secretary, saying that their course is not available, only to find out that the teacher was not able to click on that button wherein it will show the course to the students. And it has already been a week after the start of the semester. So remember, that is part of your managerial role and part of your learner support with your student. And then you should update your guide. If you have a course guide, you should be able to update it. If you have a study guide, you should be able to update it, especially with your name, your contact information, what is your preferred communication method, expected response time to messages and assignments, and other policies specific to your course or as you as a facilitator. Now I'm saying this because um, in remote teaching and learning, students are will be using all kinds of platforms to communicate with you. So they would probably email you, they would probably send you a text, they would probably send you a message in your FB account uh, saying that they have these specific concerns or they have specific questions. which is why it is important that you, as a teacher, and this is part of your role as a manager of a course and part of your learner support, that you should articulate clearly what is your preferred communication method and how would you respond to the messages sent to your students. So it should be clearly indicated, for example, in your course guide, you will say there, all questions and inquiries should only be sent through the learning management system. I will not entertain questions through email, through Facebook Messenger, or through my mobile number. So this should be clearly articulated so that students would know that if they communicate to you, you will only be answering them or answering their messages through your preferred communication method, which is clearly articulated in your course guide. Okay. Now I'm saying this as part of my experience because um, you might feel overwhelmed if you will be receiving a number of questions and inquiries from your students. So you should be able to clarify this through your very clear articulation of the communication method in your course guide. Now, and then you should update the dates. The dates are very important. For example, you put there the deadline of a specific assignment is on August 4, is on September 4, and yet you have not opened your assignment bin yet on that particular date. And then you will be receiving a number of inquiries, concerns, and issues from the students anymore. You will be receiving a number of concerns and inquiries from your students, so that you will prevent this kind of um, comments and inquiries. You should be able to, as a teacher, as a manager, you should be able to stick to the dates that you provide for in your course guide. So if your deadline for an assignment is on this particular date, it is your role as a teacher that everything should be open on that particular date, including the assignment bin. Okay. On a pedagogical role, so you should make necessary enhancement to course design where necessary. On a technical role, you should update hyperlinks to remove dead or broken links. You should check all media for proper display. This is important because otherwise you will be receiving again messages from your students, "Ma'am, the link for the video is not working, the link is dead, there's a broken link." So it's part of your technical role as a teacher to provide for media or links that are properly working. So you should ensure that these are working. You should test the course navigation for accessibility and correct any accessibility problem, and update course to reflect new features of the course management software. Okay, so now that's only the part that's before the week. Now we start with the first week. You have the managerial role. Um, as a teacher, you should contact missing students to encourage their participation. So on the first week, it's now your as part of your managerial role, as part of your learner support, you should be checking for students who are not participating in the learning management system. So you should be emailing them, contacting them through the uh, numbers they provided. If they are not answering through email, if they are not answering through other means, then they can ask for their contact numbers, and you can contact them and ask them if they are really enrolled in your course and encourage their participation. Minimize delay for students adding the course late to gain access to course materials, and you enroll students promptly when they drop the course. So, for example, there are students who are not supposedly in your course, and they actually they actually dropped the course. Then it's part of your role to remove them from your course. And then you provide support information when needed. Example, how to get remote access to the library, register for register in a particular electronic subscription, etc. So if you ask your students to access a particular resource, you should, and you know that this resource is available in your online library, then you should provide information on how to access this. Most of the time, you should be in close coordination with the library support so that you'll be able to provide this immediately to your student. And then on the social role, as a teacher and part of learner support, you provide a personal and welcoming introduction to develop personal presence. Now, presence, social and teaching presence is very important in remote learning. So, introduction or personal introductions such as this would be highly appreciated by your student. And then you design a forum for students to post introduction and share experiences, as well as respond to each other's in students' introduction. For those who have not experienced learning management system at all, so imagine your students are all over. I mean, they are located in other areas, in remote areas, and then they will be coming into the learning management system, and when they get inside the system, they will just see a lot of readings, etc. Then they would feel demotivated because the teacher is not present at all. I do not feel welcome. That's why it's part of your social role to provide a welcoming introduction to them, and you provide the space there, part of a discussion forum functionality, wherein you allow your students to introduce and to get to know each other through that particular forum. Um, this is very important because this builds rapport in an online or remote classroom. It's very different in a class-based learning because in a class-based, you just enter and the teacher introduce him or herself, and then the students would do the same. But in an asynchronous type of classroom setting, it is important that you allow a space there for students to introduce and interact as a way of building rapport with each other. Remember, synchronous type of introduction may not always be possible. For example, we set an introductory or an orientation uh, schedule for our course. Then you set it, for example, on a Thursday at 9 a.m. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, not all students will be able to join. So if they will not be able to join, does this mean that they lose the opportunity to introduce themselves? Probably, if you do not put in a space in the learning management system for them to introduce themselves. So you should provide for these different formats of introduction so that students will not feel left out. Okay. And then you can actually encourage students to share pictures or other representation, probably an avatar, especially for the young ones. And then you should model discussion, response behavior, and tone. So you should, as a teacher, it is your responsibility to model the tone for the class. So you use a conversational tone, but that is respectful as well. So you, for example, it's kind of personal but friendly and encouraging, but at the same time you maintain formality because it is a class. So you don't use words which are not complete. So you should model, for example, you type you instead of you really spell it out YOU. It's like really typing a formal letter, but the tone is conversational so that students would feel motivated to respond as well. And then, of course, aside from the formal forums wherein you put in academic questions, you should also put a social forum for non-class related topics. So, for example, in my course, I put there kapihan. Kapihan Forum is a forum wherein anything goes. Students can share anything. Students can just say hi. They can share a story or whatever, which is not related to the class. And then you can provide icebreaker, and then you can also challenge the students by asking questions which apply to their readings and communicating your high expectation to them. Okay. Now, throughout the course, it is important that you are always there, and ensuring that your presence can be felt by your students. It does not mean that you are 24/7 present there, but when I say teaching presence, you should be able to devise ways wherein students will feel your presence there. You can put in questions, you can provide synthesis after all the discussion, etc. Now, it is also important that you enforce guidelines for learners' behavior, such as netiquette and due dates. And you should be able to spot cyberbullying in your classroom discussion. And then it is important also that you monitor discussions for respectfulness based on etiquette standards and university behavior policies. So if you see disrespectful posts, for example, you see a post by one student bullying another student, you can actually remove it if it's part of your course policy, or you can actually call the student and send him a private message. Tell him or her that as part of your course policy, they should maintain netiquette standards and avoid cyberbullying. This is very important because if bullying is rampant in a physical classroom or in a campus-based situation, it is also very rampant in online in cyber setting. Which is why, as a teacher, you should be able to spot if there are posts which you think are disrespectful and offensive, and you would see that it falls under a cyberbullying post already, then you should call the attention of that specific student. But you should do it privately. Um, if you do it on a class level, you can just make a general announcement or reminder of your netiquette policy. But I would also recommend that you call the attention of the specific student privately. So you can probably send him or her message calling his or her attention, and tell him what he or she did wrong and how to improve on that particular behavior. Okay. Now, it's also important that you make regular announcement in your courses. In your learning management system, there's a part there which says announcement. So you should post announcement to keep your class updated on all the on what's happening to your courses. This is also a part of learner support, so that students will always be motivated to participate in your classes. So as I mentioned, you should maintain presence in your online class. I do not mean 24/7 presence, but you should maintain presence by answering questions, providing synthesis, and posting announcements, and clarifying some concepts and discussion. And then it is also important that you provide feedback indicating in areas in which the students have succeeded, as well as areas that require further development in a timely manner. It's also important that you design peer collaborative activities, and you allow students to conduct peer review and um, peer assessment. And then it is also, as part of learner support, you should also provide rubrics or criteria so that students would know how they are graded in a particular activity, so that they will not be asking you anymore about the specifics of a particular task or assignment. So when you provide a task or an assignment guide, criteria or rubric should also be included. And then you also it is also important that you direct students to links and information on technical support. So you regularly remind them, if you are experiencing problem or technical problem, you can refer them to links to the help desk, the ticketing support system, so that they would be reminded that if they have problems, they can go to these support services and avail of the services that are provided to them. Okay, now we go to okay. Now we go to the final week. Uh, Final week. So, as a manager, as part of your managerial role, you provide general information concerning the nature and format of the final exam or the final assessment. You'll alert students on how long course materials will continue to be available after the end of the class. So, for example, the end of the class is December 1. So, a week after that, you should announce to your students that the course site or the learning management site will no longer be available to them a week after the end of the semester. It would depend on your class policy, but what I'm saying is that you should inform the students so that they will not be asking questions anymore, and they will not feel motivated, that they will not have access anymore to the course site. And then you should inform them and encourage them to complete the course evaluation if there is one. And then, of course, you should post final grades promptly. And part of your social role, this is one of the good practice that is suggested. You send an email with a closing personal message to students. So you say them that you had a productive semester and that you hope that the student learned something from the course or the subject. So you should make it more personal so that student would feel appreciated. Encourage students to share their class experience and say goodbye in a closing forum. So you put a closing forum there, and you ask your student to share something about what they experienced during the semester, and you ask them to say goodbye to their classmates and to you as a teacher. And of course, don't forget to provide feedback on the final project and make it available to students even after the class is over. And then on the technical role, you should list technical aspects that work well and those that need improvement, and you can forward these to the technical support so that they can improve on their services as well. So if you have encountered problems in terms of library support, for example, the materials that you ask your students to read are not available in the library, then you should provide feedback to the library support. If you encountered problems in terms of administrative support, then you should provide feedback to the administrative support. So if you encountered problems related to all the institutional support services, then you should provide feedback to them as a teacher so that they can improve on that services for the coming semesters. Okay. Now, um, just to wrap up, let me share with you what are the characteristics of an effective learner support. So first, learner support should be purposeful. So it should exist to support learners in their studies from first inquiry through graduation and beyond. As I've said, learner support should not be just during the time that they're a student, but should actually be before, during, and after the learning process. And it should be integrated into institutional mission and strategic objectives. Number two, it should be transparent. It should provide clear points of contact, clear standards of service identified. Number three, it should be accessible. It should be available and on demand according to the needs of the learners. So 24/7 where possible. So I'm not saying here that you should provide 24/7 staff to provide for the needs of the students. But you can actually automate these support services so that a 24/7 support services is available to the students. And then it should be responsive to individual needs, and provide efficient turnaround. So it's very important that you address and provide timely feedback to the needs of your students. And then it should be interactive, encourage and facilitate interaction among and between students, faculty, student support staff, and academic content. And then it should be self-directed and developmental, meaning it facilitates self-management of processes and development of skills and attitudes necessary for independence and lifelong learning, which is actually, I think, part of the 21st century skill that most of your universities are espousing. And number seven, very important, an effective learner support services must be integrated. It should demonstrate a high level of cross-functional collaboration that results in services being experienced as seamless by the learner. So in all the support services that I have discussed, it is important that all of those are integrated so that students would feel a seamless experience. So instead, for example, they ask support to this particular office, then that particular office would say, "Oh, that's not our concern. You should ask this." So we should try to make it more integrative so that we'll be able to provide a seamless experience for our learners. Number eight, it should be open to change. It should evolve continuously to accommodate new learner populations, educational developments, economic conditions, technological advances, and findings from research and evaluation. So, how do we do this in our university? So here are some steps to building effective learner support services. Of course, number one, there should be commitment from the university officials to establish a system of learner support. Number two, you can create a cross-functional team to develop a strategic plan for student support services. For example, one from Office of Student Affairs, one from Office of the University Registrar, from the Dean's Office, from the ICTD, program directors, etc. And then you align the plan with the institutional mission and strategic directions. And then you clearly identify the objectives to be achieved by making the transition to online student services and how achievement of these objectives will be measured. Example, improve satisfaction with services for all students, retention, skill development, and engagement. And number five, this is very important. You should include student representation by asking students for ideas about how student services can be improved and or made more accessible through innovative applications of technology. And then you should collect all relevant information to be considered. For example, online learner characteristics, data about impact of existing services, students' needs survey, reports from online faculty about needs for referral points, research about future needs and identify gaps in services. And then you develop the integrated and seamless process and procedure for learner support services. And don't forget to monitor and evaluate services provided. Now, to end my presentation, let me just say that we have comprehensively discussed about how we should provide services to our learners. But of course, this also goes hand in hand with your university's plan to support your teachers and the staff involved in your support services. So, teachers and support services staff must be given opportunities themselves to enhance their profession and practice. Because otherwise, what they will do is just patch new practices uh, into new ones or adapt the most superficial aspect or practice. So it's important it should be capacitated. So aside from capacity building, it's important that you build an enabling environment so that staff and teacher must be given importance when they are when they are providing these learner support services. And I think that ends my presentation. Thank you, everyone, and I look forward to the question and answer portion.
Okay, so thank you very much, Doc Joanne, and may I greet everyone a good day. I am Dr. Bandalaria, and I will serve as the moderator for this session. So while we are waiting for the questions to come in, probably we can further discuss some of the aspects that you have covered. So I thank you for that very comprehensive presentation of learner support, or what services should we be providing to our learners and also to our teachers under this remote teaching and learning mode of delivery. So as a starter, as I mentioned, we encourage our participants to send in their questions. There's the Q&A button in our platform. So I think I will start and give the first question. I think I also have to mention that the reason why when we look for a resource person for learner support, we always think of Dr. Joanne Serrano because of her experience as well. I mean, it's not just her experience of providing learner support to the students as a teacher, but because during the early years of UPOU, especially when we transitioned to the online mode of instructional delivery, Dr. Serrano was one of our learning center coordinators. So she was really dealing directly with the students and addressing their concerns in this mode of instructional delivery. So if I may ask, based on your experience as a learning center coordinator at the time, and also as a teacher now in an online mode of delivery, what are the most common concerns that you encountered or often requested by the students and usually addressed by learner support service? Most common, the usual concern, the usual support that they would be asking for.
Thank you, Chancellor. So let me just answer that question by putting it on the context of the support services that we provided during the time. Because during the time when there was a learning center, students were able to go to a center. So they can talk to a specific person and they can ask for their concern. They can ask their specific concern. So during the time, since there were already printed materials, because during the time there were still some modules given to them, some of their questions were actually administrative in nature. So, like for example, when do they receive their grades, their IDs? They haven't received some of their grades for the past semesters yet. So some of the concerns during the time were administrative in nature. But when we shifted to online, concerns now varied. So it includes academic in nature now. So some were about specific content of a topic. How can they learn more about this, or how can they ask for resources on this? So I would say it actually varied depending on the context and the kind of support services that a university provide.
Mm-mm.
So I think what's important here, as I would like to go back to my discussion earlier, is that if you plan for all those kinds of needs by the students, then students would not demand so much anymore. So, like for
Mm-mm.
example, if we're able to provide them with immediate feedback, then they would not demand for more support services. If you provide them with access to the administrative support, for example, access to grades, access to their records, then they would not be asking so much anymore. So that's it, Chancey.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So, that the range of learner support that you discussed as part of your presentation really varies. It's really wide. I mean, the coverage is really wide, and it also implies that, as you mentioned, also it has to be institutional. The approach should be institutional because there are really things. You mentioned the three levels: the course, the program, and the institutional level, and for us to be able to give that seamless experience to our students, then it has to be an institutional undertaking. But we also emphasize the very important role of the teachers because of the different roles that they are performing as a teacher. You mentioned the managerial, the social, and even the technological or the technical role, and it goes upon the teacher uh, to really learn about all these things. Although if we can really look at it deeply, um, probably if, except for the technological or the technical role, uh, many of these things they are already performing in the classroom setting. Um, Based on your experience as well, now transitioning to being a teacher, which among these roles will be or is the most challenging? I mean,
Um,
we are also to put ourselves in the position of the teachers who are preparing for this mode of instructional delivery for the first time.
yes, thank you, Chancellor. So all those roles are actually really challenging. But for me as a teacher, I think the managerial and pedagogical role are quite challenging because on the managerial role, it's really the nitty gritty. It's basically a classroom management, and it's easier if it's done on a classroom setting because you can see your students. So if, like for example, if you know there's a seat there vacant, you would know that there's a missing student. So you can just do a roll call. Okay, is this student A, B, or C present, etc. But in an online environment, you have to check their participation. There's an analytics in the learning management system wherein you can see if that particular student has already accessed the course site and what are the activities that that particular student has already done in your course. Has that student already downloaded the course guide? Has she seen the course guide? Has she viewed or posted in the discussion forum? So this is kind of challenging because it's very taxing on the part of the teacher that you
Yeah.
have to check each one of the participation of that student. Now it's important that you do that because by knowing that, then you'll be able to do your intervention. So, for example, it's already a week past, and these particular students have not accessed the course site at all. Then it is my duty on a managerial role that I will email or I will communicate to the student in all kinds of format and ask them, are you still enrolled in my course? What happened? What is your context? And this is more challenging now that we are in a global health crisis because we do not know the context of our students.
Yeah.
Maybe that student has suffered something, I don't know, probably a loss of life, loss of lives, displacement, some mental problems. So we do not know how to approach that particular student. So it's very challenging because of this particular situation that we are in.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think both pedagogical and managerial. Pedagogical because you have to integrate all this in your course design
Mhm.
and in your course development. Otherwise, students would be asking you questions if your courses are not properly designed. So I think those are the two roles that I find quite challenging.
Yeah, you mentioned something about how we can facilitate this roles of the teacher. Something like you mentioned about the analytics that can be provided by the learning management system, as well as being able to communicate to the students in the event that they are not accessing the course site or they are not submitting their the course requirements. So I think that is also implying that when we choose our learning management system for the use of the school, then we should also somehow look for these features because it will make the role, these different roles of the teacher easier. I think that was also our experience at UPOU that when we really want to check, I mean, the status, academic progress of our students, we turn to analytics, even if it's just the basic analytics in terms of providing information as to when was the last time your student accessed the online course site. I think it's a very good reminder to the school administrators that when we do select a learning management system for our use, they should this system, this LMS, should provide the teachers specifically with those functionalities or features. Okay, so there are also two important features. I mean, you started your presentation with saying that we are very much concerned with delivering instructional content when we shift to this mode of instructional delivery that oftentimes we don't pay too much attention to the learner support, I mean to the support system that we can provide, we should be providing to our students. You mentioned two services that we should be providing, one of which is an orientation. Given that our students are no longer or will no longer be physically present in the school when the school opens in August or September, can you share the good practices on how orientation, especially it's very critical now that it will be the first time for our students to do this type of learning. What good practices can we share in terms of providing this orientation to our students and probably to the parents as well, because they should also be aware of this journey that their children will be undertaking.
Yes, thank you, Chancellor. What you said about parents being involved in the orientation is actually very important. So, as an institution, you should be planning for the student orientation as if you also have a big or a grand orientation on campus. So you should plan for it and make sure that students and parents and probably guardians, because you probably have high schoolers or those in the basic education, must attend the orientation. So if you will be doing it, for example, in Zoom, you should also stream it to other platforms so that you should ensure accessibility um, for those parents or students who may not have access to Zoom or Big Marker, for example. So you should provide for all access. So the key here is accessibility so that you would ensure that all students and parents should be able to attend. So it should be a virtual, it can be a virtual type of orientation. So you inform the institution should plan for it, go through all the services that the institution should provide to the student, orient them about the school, orient them about the new policies, about the new processes, about the new procedures, about the new technology that you will be adapting now that you are doing a remote teaching and learning. What are the expectations from the students and expectations from the parents as well? So it can actually be a virtual program that will happen synchronously. It can probably an hour, 2 or 3 hours. But aside from that, it should definitely be recorded so that parents and students who will not be able to attend synchronously can access that particular orientation probably via your YouTube channel that you have mentioned
Mhm.
earlier. And then, of course, there should be a program orientation handbook as well. So there should be a written format which can be sent to students who do not have access to a stable internet connection. And it would probably difficult for them to watch videos and other multimedia formats. So you should have a printed format as well, so that students would be able and the parents would be able to avail or know about the information that you will provide for in the orientation program.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. There's also a suggestion here, and I also encourage our other webinar participants to also share your suggestions and whatever recommendations you can also put forward. We can share to our other colleagues, because this is a sharing portion. It's not just an open forum or a question and answer, but we want to look at our this open forum as a sharing session. So there is a suggestion here from our one of our webinar participants. I don't know if I think it's a mom, Edelhaini Jampay. The suggestion is in addition to the general orientation about how to undertake this or go through this online learning process, also to group our students according to the grade level because of the different concerns, to which we agree. Probably, especially those at the elementary level, they may be all basic ed, but we can really we do recognize that there are different concerns, different grade levels, even yung grade 6, 7, or senior high school, they have different concerns, and probably for us at the institution as well, we also can see differences in terms of what we should be providing, the different needs at the different levels of our students. So uh, um, there's a follow up here, kahit YouTube channel. We agree, because even the YouTube channel, you can put together all the resources there, and which can be accessed also by the teachers, by the parents, by the students, if they so feel the need to go back to the materials that you initially shared with them. So different platforms, different format, printed, video, ganyan. So we consider them, and again, be mindful of the accessibility. I mean, all the information should be made accessible to our students. There's another service that you mentioned, and that's the guidance and counseling. And it, as you always emphasize during your presentation, that this is very critical, especially now that we are fighting this pandemic, and given also that the students are not in the school, what best, or what kind of practice, what system can we recommend to our webinar participants now, to the different schools who are with us now? How can they provide this guidance and counseling, making sure that the mental health of our students are still okay, and they can very well undertake their learning in this mode of delivery? Some recommendations.
Yes. Chancellor, before you answer that, let me just go back to the orientation because
Okay.
it was mentioned about the specific grade level. That is actually a good suggestion. Like in UPOU, what we do here is we have a plenary first, a plenary
Yeah.
orientation. So it's like a general orientation. We orient them about the university. So you orient them about your school, what are the services that you provide, etc. and then you can do a breakout session,
Mm-mm.
and now this can now be on the grade level. So, for
Mm-mm.
example, you can probably join some grade level with similar concerns like grade 5 and 6, or grade 4 to 6, and then the preschoolers, or the high school grade 7 to 8, and then the senior high school, etc. So I think that's that that's a good practice that you can do. But it would be nice to have a general orientation first, so that you will not be repeating information that should be available to everyone anyway.
Yeah.
So you can have a like a plenary or a general orientation first, then you can do a breakout session per grade level or per cohort, depending on your context. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Now on the counseling, Chancellor, and this is actually critical, and we have attended a number of conferences, and in the past, when there was no pandemic yet, they were very hesitant about online counseling. So I have
Mm-mm.
attended at the university level conferences on this, and they were saying it's really should be done cautiously, because it's very difficult really to do counseling when you cannot see the student face to face. But now that these circumstances forced us to do everything online, then this is something that we should do properly as well. So I would suggest that you can probably have a hotline. The school should have a hotline where students or parents can call a
Yeah.
counselor. So it should be a counselor that is certified and registered. It should not just be someone who should be providing counseling. So it should be a registered counselor, and then that counselor should be able to answer through calls or through a personal video conferencing, so that the counselor will be able to see and assess how the student is feeling at that particular moment. This is crucial. I would like to really highlight, because um, experts are saying that many students are undergoing stress mentally. So we should, kumbaga, extend our PC when it comes to dealing with them, because this is trying times. This is a crisis actually. So we should really be more patient and more compassionate to our students, because we are in a different kind of setup and we are in a crisis. So I think I would like to highlight that we are in a crisis. So we should be very careful and cautious when doing our counseling to our students.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's really very important, ano, especially this time. And especially, it's not just the crisis that we have to look into, but because, as we have always mentioned, our students are going through, I mean, this learning journey, I mean, for the first time, and it's really something new for them. So we have to make sure that we will be there to guide them, and assure them that they can really go through this process successfully. So I just would like to read some sharing here from Sir Oliver Mineses. So there's a thank you, Dr. Serrano, for the comprehensive presentation. I was going through the 4 online stages of facilitation. That's the pre, the pre, the start, before the start, and up to the end. Even after the semester, after the term is over, then there's still a role for us to perform. Very helpful system, a kind of structure or framework. I agree. Kind of structure that we can really have to look into. Another sharing from Sir or Ma'am Edilhaini. Counseling, we have only one remaining personnel to do it since the crisis. What can you suggest regarding the prioritization or the means to counsel? Should we have first the new students? Because of the limited personnel, what do you suggest or what do you recommend when it comes to prioritizing uh, this particular service to our student? The question is, should we give priority to the new students first?
Yeah. I think it would depend on the context, and really not
Mm,
on whether they are new or current students. So we should always prioritize those who are really in need
indeed.
for counseling.
Mm-mm.
So the counselor would know the urgency and the level of need of that particular student. So I would say that it would depend on the specific context of their issues or needs that need to be addressed
Yeah.
instead of being a new or a current student.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when it comes to being new students, when it comes to online learning, all of them will be new to this mode of instruction. And also, based on the sharing, I mean, those who had done online learning, the remote instruction when schools closed in March, they had this practice, and some even recommended that there is this regular check um, by the school personnel with the students, something like tatawagan. We call them, ask them how they are progressing, if they have problems, and then probably some of the school personnel can be trained to do that as well. Kasi para kukumustahin lang naman natin sila, and that I think is also related to that aspect that you mentioned about the isolation, which most of remote students, the or distance education students, would feel, because they are now isolated. They are not going to school. So, in a way, do you also have some suggestions on how we can assist, or the systems that we can put in place so that we can somehow reduce this feeling of isolation and promote the sense of belongingness among our students?
So I think important the institutional support on study skill assistance is very important because it's important that you capacitate your students on how to learn independently.
Mm-mm.
Otherwise, they would always be relying on their teachers, and then they would get frustrated. So this is actually important that we instill among our students, especially the basic skills. For example, among the including the digital skills on searching for online resources, etc. So as much as possible, we should provide various resources that will help them become independent type of learner. Uh, Resources on how to motivate them to study, and resources on how to um, make them more self-confident when it comes to studying. Which is why the study skill assistance is very important. In the past, when UPOU was starting out, we and there was no internet during that time, we prepared handbooks on how to get
Yeah.
organized as a distance education learner. We provide how handbook on how to do reading because most of the skills done in distance education is basically reading. So we provide all those kinds of study skills in order to have to capacitate our students to have that skill set in order for them to be a remote learning or an independent type of learning. This is important because if we don't capacitate them with this skill set, students would feel frustrated, and because they would not feel supported by the institution and by their teacher. And on your part, you would also feel frustrated because you would think that I've been providing everything to the student. I'm so exhausted now with this remote teaching and learning. So there should be a balance with that kind of provision of learner support.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a very good suggestion, ano? And we can also say that this is the kind of reality that our students would have to face anyway, that they should be able to learn by themselves, and be able to source out materials and learning opportunities, even with the minimum guidance from the teacher. So, um, if there are no more questions from our webinar participants, and no more sharing, I will be giving my the last question that I have on my list. And it's all about cybersecurity, especially given the types of learners that we have in Don Bosco schools. Most of them are at the basic ed. Of course, there are also some at the tertiary level. But do you think, or how important it is that we include in our orientation package or our orientation materials measures or tips or information about cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think it's really, really very important. I've mentioned in my discussion earlier that this is one important area that we should include in our plan because everyone is really doing online transactions now. So
Yes.
we know there are those individuals who would be preying on our learners because they are young and they are inexperienced and yet they are doing online transactions already. So this should be part of our Chancellor should be part of our orientation material, and that there should be a very clear resource that we
Mhm.
will provide to our students that will help them make critical analysis of the
Yes.
information they get from online resources. So we can provide specific cases, like for example, specific examples like when do not just click on this particular link, what will happen if they do that, so that they would understand because we are dealing here with kids for the
Mhm.
basic education. It's easier for the not really easier, but for UPOU, most of our students are graduate students, so basically they're adult learners. Although
Yeah.
we have undergraduate students, so it's also critical. But it's more critical for the basic ed students. So I think they should be included in our orientation materials, should be uploaded in our website, and we should include this in our FAQs. And this should be included on the course level orientation event so that teachers would remind their students about the importance of securing their information, securing their data, and not be subjected to these issues on cybersecurity.
Okay. I mentioned that that was supposed to be my last question, but I saw also some questions here. This one is from Mom Emma. It says, "Is the online course on facilitation still available? Do we have something like that? How to access uh, about the online course on facilitation? I think there's none at the moment. Ano? From UPOU. But I'm not so sure from Don Bosco if there is. But from UPOU, we don't have anything current. I mean, currently offering something on this. Probably in the future. Yeah. Yeah. And okay. Okay. So I think that's the last question from our webinar participants. So thank you very much, Dr. Joanne Serrano, for sharing the support services that we should be providing to our learners in this mode of instructional delivery, providing some practical examples on how we can do it, concretizing all these concepts. So thank you, and I hope that we were able to give some tips and strategies to our webinar participants and to their schools. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to those who asked the questions, shared their insights. Thank you very much as well for that active participation. So on to you, Ma'am Tina.
Thank you, Doc Mel. Indeed, it was really a comprehensive and thorough discussion, and we truly appreciate the question and answer portion, also the sharings of our audience. We thank you for your time, and I think now the teachers would be ready. And though they are holding many roles now on their hats, so I think they are really prepared to face the online learners for since August is now near. Again, we thank you, Doc Joanne and Professor Doc Mel. Thank you also to our audience for sharing your time with us. Do look out for our next Chalk Talk online sessions. As Brother Carmelo mentioned a while ago, we are still having our chef series. So on Friday, we'll be having the chef series part 2 of practical guidelines in making modules, Christian living in the new normal. And then on Thursday, July 23, we'll be having the second episode of the Love Institute series. And this is another important help for all teachers. We have our partnership with the Psychological Association of the Philippines, or the PAP, for the mental health program in school, suggested scope, support system, and structure. That would happen on July 24, a Friday. And then the sixth installment of the UPOU Remote Teaching and Learning series would happen on July 29. And the next session for Chef series on retreat and recollection will be on July 31. Please do visit our Facebook page for more updates. Just look for Don Bosco Press Inc. And of course, you may contact your Salesiana Books account executives to ensure your slots. Some other reminders. For those who have registered for today's Chalk Talk Online, you will be receiving your certificates for this session in 2 weeks' time. Also, you will be receiving a recording of today's session. Lastly, please do accomplish the evaluation survey at the end of this session to help us serve you better. So again, we thank you for joining us today at Salesiana Books Chalk Talk Online. We hope to see you again in our upcoming sessions. This is Tina de Guzman, thanking you, and until next time.
Quality education through quality textbooks.